Okay, here we are. Welcome to Muscle Science for Women with my very special ongoing guest, Beth Lipton. It's been a little while since we've recorded an episode for this series all about aging and being healthy and happy and just sort of exploring the concepts that often go hand in hand with the idea of getting older, right? So today we're going to talk about, they're all big ones, but this is a big one too. We're going to talk about beauty. What are your thoughts that come up when we bring up this topic? I know we talk about it a lot offline, but what are you thinking when we come up with this topic?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier and how, we talk about our kids all the time.
Sure.
And this is one of the ways in which probably our attitudes about this are different in the sense that you have a little boy and I have a teenage daughter. And so a lot of my view on beauty and aging is informed by my parenting in a way that I feel like it wouldn't necessarily be if there were no Dylan. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Because I feel like everything I do or don't do, she sees. So that makes a big difference in terms of what I think about. I'm also surrounded by young, beautiful teenage girls all the time. So
Yeah.
that's something else too.
That's interesting. And it's funny because I hadn't even gotten that far yet in the thought process to think about how being a parent maybe has changed or in any way impacted my feelings about beauty. But I will say, completely agree with your line of thinking there. But also, I think becoming a parent for me really did impact my own personal journey of beauty, not necessarily as it relates to like teaching or communicating anything to my son, but in just a shift in priorities, I think, which was really big. And I think it's something that I was reflecting on when I was thinking about this episode that we were going to record, that, and I'm sure, we all have our own journeys and things change and adjust as we go through life and evolve. And that's what it is. And that's cool. And I think a lot of people may relate to this sort of big switch that I had too, where so many things kind of collided during the pandemic, becoming pregnant, and also sort of just the age that I was entering into. So like late 30s, which is kind of this nebulous age. Like people think of 30 and 40 and 50 as being these sort of real, points. And, what is 37? Who cares? Whatever, you're doing fine. Don't worry about it. Like move on. But I think all of these things sort of happening at the same time, like being shut off from the world, not being in a position where I had to be presentable to anyone for a really long period of time. And then being pregnant and then feeling so different in my body. And then the postpartum thing, and then it just not caring anymore. And it was just like, it's really, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Like I still feel very differently about my approach to beauty and how I show up in the world than I did before the pandemic hit. I don't know if that's something that was impactful for you that way or not.
Yeah, but it leaves me wondering for you, like, what would you say that your approach to it was before, and what would you say your approach is to it now?
I feel like one of the big things about this conversation is that everything is so subjective and relative. So I want to say that before the pandemic, I cared about being attractive for sure. I put a lot of effort into being healthy, which is something we'll talk about later because I think health and beauty, again, very connected in a way that we can discuss and explore. I was never somebody who I don't know, got their hair done every couple of months and did their makeup every time they left the house and bought new clothes all the time. Like there's a spectrum, and I wouldn't consider myself somebody super high maintenance, super concerned with being the hottest person in the world, but I wanted to be attractive. I wanted to look good and I cared. And I wouldn't post an unflattering picture on social media. I wouldn't do that. So wherever on the spectrum I was, I think is subjective to other people. Other people may have looked and been like, you're the vainest person in the world. And compared to other people, I'm not even scratching the surface, right? But I would say certainly before the pandemic, before a kid, I definitely thought about how I looked. I think pretty like frequently, like certainly on a daily basis. I'm looking in the mirror and really caring what I look like. I'm fortunate that I don't feel like it ever got to a point where it was messing with my mental health or my happiness. I've always been kind of okay with how I look and feel and the response that I've gotten from people. When the pandemic hit and things sort of shut down, and it was sort of coinciding with, again, kind of just entering a different place in my life of like sort of settling down a bit more in a way, and like caring less about traveling and going to events and just showing up online all the time and stuff. And so there was sort of a relief in it. I didn't really ever have much of a like mourning period of like, oh, I'm not 30 and like super hot anymore. You know what I mean? Like I'm just kind of accepting it. I think that I'm not, I don't know. I don't look the same way that I did 10 years ago. And maybe I'm not getting the same level of attention. I'm not trying to get the same level of attention. And I did have to kind of swing back a little bit because I did probably go too extreme to the point of like I remember there was a period postpartum where I'm like, I would leave the house and be like, I haven't even looked in the mirror. Like, I don't know what's going on at all. I have no idea. Like, I think I brushed my teeth this morning. Definitely didn't brush my hair. Like it did. And, there's also the conversation we can have about the like sort of self-respect, self-care, beauty combination, right? And I think I probably swung too far where I was just like, this just isn't my priority. I don't care. And then I started to realize when I did put a little bit more effort in, I felt better, right? Which makes sense because we want to look our best, however that is to us. So anyway, I'm rambling now, but I don't know. I feel like I almost feel like it was easier for me, this concept of aging and not being the universally accepted, sexiest, hottest age anymore. I think that happening at a time when so much other stuff was happening really kind of helped me because I don't know, maybe if I was trying to be the biggest, fitness influencer online and I'm turning 40 and everybody else is 20 and I don't know. I feel like maybe that would have been more of a struggle for me, but things were happening where I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm doing other things instead. And so just a shifting of priorities and what's important. It's still important to me that I feel attractive and that I put effort into how I look, but it's less important. And it's also way less important what other people think about it.
Mhm.
That's it. That's what I have to say. What do you think? What do you think?
Well, for me, it's less about the pandemic and more about menopause, which I went through over the last, well, it's hard to say exactly, but I'm 53 now. In retrospect, it started when I was around 46, 47, but I didn't realize it at the time. So it's really only the last 3 years that I recognize like, oh, right, this is happening.
Yeah.
And so it brought about a lot of changes, not the least of which was the way I look. And this isn't unique to me. I feel like you hear this all the time from women my age, where it's like I literally changed overnight, but I really feel like I did. Like I changed overnight. That's what it felt like. And even between like 50 and 52, which was like sort of the height of my like menopause intense journey, like that's definitely when it happened, but it really felt like it was so fast. And I went from being like, I mean, a woman in her 40s isn't, as you said, is never like the sort of conventionally thought of as hottest person, but I arguably have gotten into the best shape of my life in the last 10 years. So like in my 40s, I was kind of like cruising along pretty well. And then I really had to start like having that experience of looking in the mirror and being like, who's this old lady? So yeah, it's jarring. It's absolutely jarring. And this is coming from me, and like I take really good care of myself, and I'm on hormone replacement, and I'm kind of like doing all the things I can do, and I'm feeling really great. And like, I really feel like I have not suffered the sort of like stuff that people suffer in menopause. I mean, I had symptoms, which is why I went on HRT, which is a whole separate conversation, but like I'm doing all the things. So I feel energized and I feel great, but I definitely see it on my face, in a way that, you sort of like, it's going to happen, but you never really think it's going to happen.
It's still surprising. Yeah.
Still surprising. Yeah. And I look at my, as I mentioned, like I have this like young, beautiful teenage daughter, and like, um, and when I say like I'm surrounded by young, beautiful teenage girls, like I don't mean to make that's not creepy. Like I'm not like
Sure.
I want to be like them or I'm jealous of them. I'm not. It's just like amazing being around that kind of like young female energy, and
Youth,
they're
yeah.
also smart and they're also funny, and um, they're just like great kids. And they are so focused on what they look like. So it's just like sort of a big topic of conversation around here.
Yeah. So what kind of tools or thought processes do you go through? Because to your point, I think you and I are both very kind of action-oriented people, where it's like if there's a challenge or a problem or an obstacle, instead of kind of running around tearing our hair out, we're like, okay, what do we do? Let's just do it. Let's just do something real quick. And you're a very educated person and informed, and you are doing all the things with HRT and taking care of yourself and eating properly and all that stuff. So with the knowledge that like aging comes for us all regardless, your face is going to change no matter how healthy you are, and like all of these things, how have you grappled with that?
Well, grappled with it, or what are the things that I'm doing to kind of like manage it? Or
Both.
So grappling with it, I think, is just an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I have my good days and my bad days like anybody. And I think this is true of all women, no matter how old we are. We all have days where we look in the mirror and we're like, okay, I'm fairly cute. Like, this is good. And days where we're like, oh my God, get me a paper bag to put over my head immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think, is the same as it's always been. Like I said, it is sometimes jarring to look in the mirror and be like, wow, I really do look like an older person. Like that is jarring. But in terms of like what to do about it, I mean, I am definitely not a beauty expert by any stretch. For me personally, like I drink a lot of water, and I think that makes a big difference. Um,
Me
I
too.
do.
I try.
I mean, I'm like never without my water bottle, and I really think that matters. I think sweating, and getting lots of exercise and making sure your circulation is going. Sleep is obviously really important for your
Huge.
skin. I use topical estrogen on my face, which, so we can talk about this like when we talk about hormones, but hormones are more than just the patches and the pills and stuff. There's also like there's vaginal estrogen, and also you put estrogen cream on your face, and it is supposed to help with, having that more elastic and kind of more filled out look. I also recently had a procedure done on my neck.
Okay.
For me, my neck is more of an issue than my face. You know, everybody gets like a saggy neck. You can't really escape that. Some people more than others. And I guess thin people have more, like it's more pronounced because we have sort of less plumpness in general. So, and I've always been thin, so my neck it really started sagging a few years ago. And that actually has always bothered me more than my face. It's almost like I expect my face to have some wrinkles and whatever because I am the age I am. My neck, I don't know why, I just wasn't expecting it to be as like pronounced as it was. So I started looking into like what I could do about it. And obviously like neck lift surgery is like the gold standard, but that was never a consideration for me. I'm not having any kind of surgery. And I say this without judgment for like anyone who wants to do any sort of procedure. I think people should do, not that it matters what I think, but I think people should do whatever they want to themselves. For me personally, I'm not interested in fillers. I'm not interested in Botox. And I'm not interested in surgery. So with that in mind, there's only like a few other things you can do. So I did this thing called Morpheus. And I've had one treatment. I'm going back to have a couple more. In fact, one is next week. And it's essentially micro needling, but it's also like other stuff as well. There's like light therapy and stuff along with the needles. And it was like nothing. I mean, it was not nothing, but like there wasn't like a long recovery period. I went right on with my day. it wasn't painful. I mean, it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't painful. It's expensive, but like, I'm like someone who doesn't like buy a lot of shoes or buy a lot of clothes or buy a lot of stuff. So I kind of felt like this is
It's
something that
important to you.
is important to me. And I didn't feel ashamed about telling my kid about it, which was also like another important thing because I'm very open with her.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's what I did. And I'm really glad I did it, honestly. Like I mean, you can see I still have saggy neck, but it's much better. And I think after the second treatment, it's supposed to get even better.
Okay.
It takes 4 to 6 weeks for the first treatment to kind of like take hold. And then the second treatment is supposed to be even better. But they were at the place, they were like, you're not going to have a 25-year-old neck. And I was like, I'm good with that. I don't need to have a 25-year-old neck. I just wanted it to be a little better. And I feel like that's what it has achieved.
Cool.
So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about procedures and stuff, but I feel like to back it up before we even kind of get into some of this nitty gritty, I was doing some more research before this call. And of course, this is going to surprise absolutely zero people listening to this podcast, that the conversation of beauty and aging gracefully and aging naturally and how to age well as aesthetically, that conversation is pretty much exclusively directed towards women, right? Wow, shocker. That's so surprising, right? Because of course this industry and, pop culture in general is like predicated on the fact that if we feel bad about ourselves, we'll spend more money, right? I mean, that's the deal.
Yeah. And we're all supposed to be young forever and all of that.
Right. And again, I'm not trying to say for the few men who may be listening to this podcast, this episode specifically, that you don't have concerns about aging, that you don't have the same thing where you wake up some days and you're like, who's that old man in the mirror? Look, we all have to face it. It can be scary and people, whatever. It's a thing for all of us. But I think it's naive to think that it's the same pressures for men as it is for women. I think that's, absolutely not the case. And I think it's interesting that it's such a bigger conversation and just so crucially important for women to just chase and fight this concept, right? But at the same time, it's like we're in a time in history where women are more, and I'm using air quotes because, empowered to do things to look younger and feel younger. We're empowered, we're encouraged. It's no longer as shameful or taboo to do things to alter your image and all of that stuff. But there's also still always this conversation about how graceful and natural and beautiful it is to allow yourself to age naturally. So it's like, what kind of messages are we getting where it's like, here are the 50 billion things you can do to change how you look younger, look different, look like everyone else, whatever. But also look at how classy is it? How wonderful is it to just accept your gray hair and your wrinkles and just do it naturally? And, oh, that's so lovely. But is it like, it's so lovely for them, but not for us over here? Do you know what I mean? It's like this weird dichotomy.
You're totally right. And if you look in like the celebrity realm, you look at somebody like Nicole Kidman, who's clearly had a lot of work done. And again, I say that without judgment,
Sure.
Especially for an actress, versus, oh my God, her name just flew out of my head. The woman from Baywatch.
Pamela Anderson?
Pamela Anderson.
Yeah.
Who is, had all kinds of press because she shows up to events without makeup on.
Right.
And if you ever read the comments, which I do, because I'm so curious what people are saying, you'll see people on both sides saying both. Like people pictures of Nicole Kidman, half of them are like, oh my God, she looks amazing. And half of them are like, what the fuck did she do? Can I say that?
Yeah, it's okay, sure.
What the fuck did she do to herself? And then on the other side, same with Pamela Anderson. You have people saying, oh my God, what happened to her? She used to be so beautiful. And other people being like, she looks better now.
Yeah.
So it sort of doesn't, in the sense of like what society thinks, I feel like you have to let it go because someone's going to have something to say no matter what you do. So you may as well please yourself because that's really all that matters. And arguably you're going to show up more confidently, which is always attractive if you listen to yourself and do what works for you. And I know that's really easy to say and not easy to do, but
Yeah. It's
whenever I think
definitely,
about this and my approach to it, that's what I think. I think like, what am I okay with? Because the fact is like, some people are going to look at me and be like, wow, you look great. And other people are going to be like, yikes, what happened to you? You know, and there's nothing you can do about that.
I mean, I feel like that is the best sentiment, that is the best ideal, but how do we, again, in the current climate that we're in, how do we even know what we're doing for ourselves anymore? Because
Right.
I have had personal conversations with people who have varying degrees of invasive plastic surgery. And I've had friends who, in the same breath, can tell me that they're doing it for themselves to feel better, and also that they, no matter what they do, have debilitating self-esteem issues and are struggling. And I empathize because, to your point, we all have, to varying degrees, good and bad days and feelings about ourselves. But how do we even know that the lip filler is something we're doing for ourselves when we live in a world where there's so much pressure, there's so much, at this point, overt encouragement to do these things? And I don't, and the undercurrent is always that you aren't okay the way you are. And so, you know, you've said this, and I agree too, that like, it's not our business what other people do. It truly isn't. And we shouldn't care so much about what other people want to do. But if we're having this conversation about the beauty industry, it's like, all of this stuff that is supposed to be empowering us is coming from a place of, you're not good enough now, you know? So like, how do we do that? And, you know, the other thing I wanted to mention too, about like all the kind of procedures right now, and your great point about everyone's going to have something to say, or you're never going to please anybody, or you're never going to be perfect no matter what. So just do what you want to do. The other side of that is that beauty is incredibly subjective, and it's also trendy, right? Like, you look back through history and different body types, different hair color, different face types, different fashion, everything goes in and out of vogue. And right now, I do think that it is a very unique time in beauty trend. And I think probably at some point in the future, we will look back at the sort of period of real intense like facial alteration and how ubiquitous and relatively easy and accessible it was. And we will look back and be like, that was kind of a weird time. I do think that's probably going to happen. Similar to, you know, you look back at, I don't know, what decade was it? Well, there were many decades where everybody like plucked off all their eyebrows, right? Like you look back, you're like, oh,
I
damn.
used to have the most beautiful, thick, full eyebrows. They are gone.
Yeah, even me when I was like 13, like I was missing the first like third of my eye. Horrible. Anyway,
Yep.
but
The
you
one
know,
thing I tell my daughter she can't do. I'm like, you can do anything you
don't leave them
want.
alone.
Your
Just
body,
leave
it's
them
your
alone.
face. But I'm like, leave your eyebrows alone. I'm begging you.
Yeah, just show pictures and just be like, come on. Like, anyway. But what's
All right.
again like uniquely interesting about right now is that one of the popular trends right now with Botox and fillers and stuff like that is a purposely unnatural look, right? So whereas it seems like for many decades leading up to it, the whole thing was like, let's be subtle and let's be secretive and let's let people guess and just say, you look so amazing. What have you done? You look young, you look younger than you are, to a period now where everything is very, very overt and inflated in a way that you want people to know you've had a ton of things done, or you don't care if that's what they assume, you know? It's a really interesting time. And I think, I don't know. So yeah, the current climate, I think, again, just kind of is a reminder that like these things kind of come and go. And if you're feeling like you're being a little bit left behind because you don't want to subscribe to that trend, just like the bell bottoms or the jeans or the whatever, it'll come and go. Just wait wait until the trend that suits you better comes back in, and just enjoy it, you know, like the bigger butts versus bigger boobs versus muscle versus no muscle. Like, just wait till your time comes back around again, I guess. I don't know.
No, totally. It's interesting because I'm sorry, I keep talking about my kid, but I feel like in this particular context, she shows up a lot in my thought process. So, so I apologize to everyone
No,
for
it's
being
great.
the person talking about their kid, but when I told my daughter that I was going to do this thing with my neck and she was like asking about it and I was explaining, she was like, I just don't want you to look different.
Mm.
And I said, I won't. Like it's the results are very subtle, which is why I was attracted to this particular thing. But then I asked her, like, when you say don't look different, like, what do you mean? And she was like, it's not just you. She was like, I think women aging is beautiful. And she said that like completely sort of unprompted by me. And I thought that was really interesting for a 15-year-old, because I think she is noticing just what you're talking about, that there's all this sort of exaggerated
Mm.
stuff around the way we look. And so I think what she's responding to is that sort of, I'm going to use the word natural and I don't like to, but like
Mhm.
that sort of the natural sort of order of things where older people start to look older. I think that's what she was responding to.
Mhm.
So I thought it was really interesting that's how she feels about it. Not like, because I know she worries about both about Mark and me aging. Um, but I feel like except for like the sort of existential part, I feel like she does kind of want me to look like her mom. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not like
Mhm.
her sister
Yeah.
or friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting to hear that coming from her. But the reason why I don't like to use the word natural is because, and I don't use that around myself with beauty, even though a lot of the stuff that I do is like, is like natural. Like
Mhm.
you asked me what I think is important, and I was like drinking water and exercise
Yeah.
and all these things that are not sort of external. But I don't use the word natural because I dye my hair. And
Sure.
like, you know what I mean? I just feel like using the word natural to me, it like automatically kind of puts some judgment on it. And I don't
Mm.
feel that judgment. And I feel like it was the same thing around childbirth. Like you and I both had
Mhm.
unmedicated birth. And I don't call it natural anymore because the fact is, like, there's nothing unnatural about having a C-section. Like that goes
Mhm.
back, thousands of years. And like, who cares? Like, who cares as long as the person has a healthy baby and they're okay? Like, one isn't
Mhm.
better than the other. So
Mhm.
I don't like to use natural. Um,
Yeah.
and it just becomes this thing about like what you're saying about like graceful, aging gracefully and all that. Like, what does that mean? Because for some people, what it means is having it not show up on their face and having it not,
Yeah.
like them aging gracefully means aging more slowly and not having it show up. And
Yeah.
other people aging gracefully means just letting yourself age however you're going to age without any sort of external inputs. And I feel like
Yeah.
both things are graceful if they work for you.
Right. Right. And to your point of it, of nobody like not making everybody happy regardless. Like I feel like one explanation of aging gracefully is when it looks like you care, like,
Yeah.
because nobody likes a woman who like doesn't care about their appearance because how dare you. But today's version of putting effort into your appearance often is this very, again, inflated, exaggerated work done where maybe your face doesn't move and maybe you have whatever. But people judge people for that. They say, well, this person is showing an effort and putting effort into what they look like and they get judged for it. And then if you go Pamela Anderson style and never wear any makeup and, maybe don't brush your hair as much, people are like, what, you don't care anymore? You just like have given up. And my own personal exploration with this stuff, because again, I'm not judging people either, and I don't want to wake up one day with a bunch of wrinkles and I feel sad about it, and I look at, I'm noticing changes and stuff too. My biggest issue, it's not even like I'm not into fillers. Like honestly, it just makes me squeamish. I just don't want to. I don't like the look personally for me. I just wouldn't want to do it. The Botox idea, it's so effective. Like I've seen what it does where I'm just like, that's wild, like if I can avoid having my little angry line, like that sounds great. Like I would be into it. My biggest thing, it isn't even like the toxic load part because we're all exposed to toxins all the time. If that's the one you choose and you, whatever, fine. My thing, honestly, is the expense and the upkeep. Like you're telling me that to get rid of that line, I have to pay hundreds of dollars every few months for what, the rest of my life until I stop caring? I can't do that. I don't want to. Like, I don't want to do that badly enough to make my forehead look a little bit better. And I don't know what that says about me. I don't know. Maybe that'll change. But it's just this idea of like this next level of sort of upkeep to try to hold on to something. It just kind of is depressing to me a little bit. And maybe again, to other people, it isn't. It's like, this is money I can afford. It's a self-care thing. Got it. For me, I'm just like, I would rather get like a amazing like massage or even like a facial. It would just feel nicer to me. And even that I'm too cheap to do as regularly as probably I should. But it's just this like this roller coaster that you can't get off, you know? And then the other kind of interesting observation that I think, again, we can't have an episode about aging without me complaining about the problems with social media. But I think that one of the things that makes it especially kind of problematic for people these days is the comparison trap, how everything's filtered, everything's photoshopped. And you're seeing all of these people with just impossibly perfect faces online all the time. And there's also this interesting, because we are becoming less connected in a real sense, in a like analog way, but more connected in this sort of global social media way, I almost feel like that has something to do with the beauty trend of all of us in a way trying to sort of look similar, right? Like there used to be kind of this like, let's explore the diversity of people and in a way where, you know, like Jennifer Grey from Dirty Dancing and her nose, right? And how she was beautiful because she was unique and different. And then she got her nose job and like no one could recognize her and knew who she was. And like people say it like ruined her career. I don't even know if that's true necessarily, but there's like a switch from, you know, exploring what makes people different and how that's beautiful to, if you look at like the top 10 beauty celebrities, they sort of maybe all are starting to look more similar because we're all getting the same procedures. And I can now have access and afford a procedure that can make me actually look more like Kylie Jenner. You know, like that wasn't available to the average person before. So I think that that's also what is making it maybe a bit more problematic. And back to my point of like, you don't know if you're doing it for yourself anymore, if you're just constantly seeing on social media that like, my friend that I went to high school with could get this procedure and now she looks like that. And I'm over here looking like this. It's just this comparison and this constant bombarding of this information and this messaging and stuff that I just think it's really hard to ignore and it's really hard to avoid.
No, you're totally right. You're right. And I also think that the thing that you're talking about social media is also happening in real life. So like I said, I'm in my early 50s. A lot of my friends are the same age and a lot of them get Botox, a lot. I would probably say most get Botox. And so when I'm in a crowd of them, they all have that look and I don't. So then you start to think like, oh, am I supposed to look like that? You know, like what's, so the same sort of compare thing happens even among your cohort. It's not just people in their 50s anymore now, like girls in their, you know, 20s and 30s are getting Botox, but I'm just not interested. Like Botox holds no interest to me. I don't mind the forehead thing. But that's me. Like other people feel differently and that's fine. Other people are fine with their neck and they don't like their forehead and like, so but it is partially what you're talking about, the upkeep part, because like I feel like once you do it, you can't really stop doing it. But also I don't know, for me personally, even though I know like my body can handle the toxic load, I just don't like the idea of injecting something that I don't need to inject. So, and again, like that's my personal thing. That's not like, I'm not saying nobody should get Botox. I think you should do exactly what you want. But it is interesting to me to sort of be in a group of women who are around the same age and like definitely a bunch of them have had it and I haven't. And you notice, I mean, how can you not notice? The interesting thing to me, and I don't know if this is true for you, but like Mark, my husband, like wants me to do nothing. Like would prefer if I never wore makeup, does not want me, like he was supportive of me doing what I did, but like he's like, you don't need it. He's like, do what you want, but like you definitely don't need it. He just, you know, he is very much like, and I mean, he's like, you're beautiful the way you are, but also I think generally just doesn't, and he's in film, so he's around like all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
Like he's like, I just want you to look like yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so I only mention that because like I wonder how much of the pressure that we all feel comes from other women, as opposed to, I mean, some of it is like the patriarchy, and we can talk about that, but like
Sure.
the patriarchy versus like individual men is
Yeah.
sort of interesting.
Yeah, it's true. Well, you see these like, the memes and stuff on social media where it's like men say they want a natural woman and this is the woman they're talking about. And it's like Rihanna with like her perfect
Yeah.
makeup on that they think is
Yeah.
like no makeup because men don't
Yeah.
really know. They
They
don't know
don't.
the degree of work that we put in. They don't know the degree of like ritual, the beauty care and what we, how we take care of our hair and our skin and our body and our makeup and all that stuff. Like men aren't tapped into that stuff. I mean, again, ask your average guy, like, I've been living with Alex for how many years? I've got my like makeup laid out. Like, there's no way he'd be able to name what any of those things are or where they go. Like, he has no
Yeah.
idea. Right.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like fair to say, and it's lovely to have supportive partners who love you the way you are. And I'm lucky I have that as well. But it's fair to say, like, you don't need it because you don't think that I need it. But if I think that I need it, it's a different
Right.
story. Right.
And he would say that. He would say, like,
Sure.
you do exactly what you want to make
Right.
yourself. His thing is always like, make yourself happy, whatever that
Right.
looks like.
Right.
But it's just interesting to me that, I do think some of that pressure is coming, like the
Totally.
is coming from inside the house.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, on the other side of that coin, people will love to kind of say and agree that like when we wear our crazy outfits or our sexy fashion when we go out and stuff, like we're not doing it for men, we're doing it for other women because we want them to notice or appreciate, or we like love compliments from women so much more than we do for men and all that stuff. Like there is like it's like a double-edged sword there where we feel like we want the approval of, but also get the judgment of other women. And we're all thinking the same thing, right? And we're all so much more critical of ourselves than other people. And, another thing that's kind of coming up for me right now, because I have some clients who, a topic that I want to explore on muscle science, maybe more than even just this episode, is this idea of completely unrealistic expectations for ourselves. And it's a big topic. And again, it's a very subjective topic because who's to draw the line between what is a healthy, realistic, challenging expectation for yourself and what is unhealthy, unrealistic, overly challenging expectation. But I've just had a number of instances lately. Again, I don't know how much of this is just my own changing values and beliefs, where I've had women come to me and say, this is the problem I have. This is the thing I want to fix or change. And here are all the things that I'm doing, and something's not working. And I'm like evaluating and auditing with my own experience and opinions. And I'm like, there's literally nothing wrong with you, with your health, with how you look, with what you're doing. Like maybe you just are, there's something else going on that you're just not going to be happy. And maybe it's because the expectation is either nebulous and intangible and it keeps moving as you move. Maybe it's completely unrealistic and you are aiming for something that does not make sense. And you know what I mean? Like having a 20-year-old neck, like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, what value am I providing? Because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, and I don't have the tools to help them maybe reframe or change their thinking. So how can I, within my own scope, help them, but also let them know, like, you're just being too hard on yourself. That's literally what it is. You're fine and you're doing great.
I mean, that's a really interesting question, especially for you as a coach, because I think you're touching on something that is like a much larger issue. Like I have a good friend who's a doctor, and she talks about how a lot of she's like a functional medicine, like a family doctor, but functional medicine. And she says this all the time, like 3/4 of the things that her patients come to her with, it's just the worried well.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with them. They're
Yeah.
fine. They have minor, like very minor ailments that are not things that are going to interfere with their life or shorten their life or lead to disease or anything. It's just, but they like get themselves all wound up over it. And I think it's a similar thing that you're talking about, where these where people are coming to you and they are legitimately feeling these feelings. So you don't want to be like, you're fine. But at the same time, it's like, this isn't something that you're going to solve with a new
Like
fitness
eating a
program.
little bit better. Yeah. Yeah.
Like this is like a much deeper, more ingrained issue that has really nothing to do with what's going on the outside. And I also wonder how much of that is true in general, like, because you hear all the time about the people who do it, who lose 100 pounds or like whatever their thing is, and they don't feel any different. They look different and they're happy they did it, but like whatever was bothering them is still bothering them.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much in our, it's getting a little off topic, but sort of like in our modern life, like I'm interested in stoicism. I know Alex is too, like how much of it is like, we don't really have a lot. I don't want to say we don't have a lot to worry about, because we do, but like, we don't have existential things to worry about as much. When I say we, I mean, like, sort of, I'm recognizing my own privilege. So I'm not saying that there aren't people who don't have existential things to worry about. There definitely are, but sort of for your average, like middle class person, like there's food on your table, you have a place to live and all of that kind of stuff. So we don't have those kinds of worries. And so what we end up worrying about, but we do have social media, so we do have all the comparison. So the stuff that we end up, like all that energy that is in all of us to keep ourselves alive, is redirected toward these aesthetic things, or what we imagine to be our health, but really isn't our health, is really something else.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, like I said, I don't mean to go off topic, but
No, that's related.
It occurs to me that like a lot of the stuff around beauty that we're so focused on is really just all that energy around staying alive pushed into something else.
Yeah. I feel like in my head, there are sort of two big buckets when we're looking at, okay, well, what are some answers, or what are some like positive takeaways or things we can think about to like solve the challenges of being worried about aging and our beauty fading and feeling bad about ourselves, all of these things. There's sort of like two main buckets that I think about, and I'm going to try to get this out without being too convoluted or forgetting what I was saying. But one of them to me is the idea of, and this is true, even if it sounds cliche, that our healthiest self is our most beautiful self, right? It sounds like something on a poster from the 1990s, but it is also true that when you are the healthiest, you feel the best, you aren't sick, you aren't tired, you aren't insanely stressed out and high cortisol and whatever. When you can be your like optimized healthy self, the most beautiful version of you is going to emerge. So that's one big bucket.
That may not be your thinnest self.
It may not be your fittest self. And so, but this is the second part I'm going to get to. So the first part is, if we can kind of hit all these major factors that we both talk about ad nauseum forever, which is finding out the diet that's best for you, and optimizing your sleep and optimizing your exercise and exercising in a way that helps you rather than hurts you, and do all of the physical lifestyle things that can make you your healthiest self, you're going to look better. Period. That's it. So that's one thing you can just do today, right? You can start working on that, and we all can do things to improve that. The other side is, and this is sort of a two-parter, but it's obviously the mental health part, because to the points that we've been talking about, you can be the most beautiful, fit person in the world and feel like shit, right? Because if you don't feel good mentally, if you don't have good mental health, if you don't feel good about yourself and who you are, how you look on the outside does not matter, right? And so one other kind of tangible part of this, because again, we are not therapists or psychologists, and we can only speak to this, at a high level, very general, not medical advice kind of way. But one thing that I do give and offer to my clients is the idea of prioritizing and working on goals that are not aesthetic, because I believe very strongly, that this has helped my mental health and make me feel good about myself, is that when you have confidence in yourself in ways that go beyond how people feel when they look at you, the rest of it is not as important or not as big of a factor. So if you feel like I am an able person who can do things, who can learn things, who can accomplish things, who can build new skills, and that can be physical, that can be like learning skills in the gym or different sports, that can be how you show up in your relationships or your work or your life or anything. But when you have any kind of goals and objectives that you can achieve that are not directly tied to how much you weigh and what you look like in the mirror, you will feel better about yourself. And then the beauty part comes. Maybe you're more accepting, maybe you're more just accepting of how you look, and you're kinder to yourself. And also when the inevitable, maybe you're less hot, shh, don't say it out loud, that's horrible, but maybe you are less hot than you were 10 years ago. It's not devastating, like, again, you can have your days. Like sometimes I think I'm cute, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, holy shit, I'm actually getting older. This is a thing. Yikes. But for the most part, I'm not losing sleep over it. I don't hate myself. I don't wish I was 25 again. Truly, all of these things are real because I'm working hard in the other areas. And so that is under that second sort of mental health umbrella. Like maybe there are some interventions or some things or some people you need to talk to or things you need to work out that go beyond the scope of, health and wellness. But one thing you could try to do right now to make yourself feel better is just get a goal, because goals are good, that isn't aesthetic. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think that's incredibly wise, and you are very wise, my friend.
Thanks. I'm trying.
I always learn from you. I think one thing I would encourage people to do when they're thinking about those goals that you're talking about, which I think is an incredibly smart thing to do, is like come up with goals that don't have to do with anything aesthetic. Make a list of 5 people, 10 people, whatever it is in your life who have had real impact on you and real meaning for you in one way or another. And then when you look at that list, think about why. What is it about those people that has had that kind of impact on you? I guarantee with none of them, it's the way they,
yeah,
it's not how hot they were.
Yeah.
And it's just a good reminder that the way we show up in the world, obviously it's important how we look. It's important for us. It's important for others. I'm not minimizing that. But when you really think about the impact that you make on others and the sort of like thing that you leave with others, it's almost never what you look like. It's almost always the way that person felt, or the way you helped somebody, or, like it's almost always that. So I feel like that can be something that you can turn to and say, oh yeah, like this matters, but it's not everything.
Yep. I love that.
When I think about like one of the people who has like the biggest impact on my life right now and really has always, is my mom's best friend, who is 86, and she's just awesome. Like, she's just like amazing. She's a very attractive lady and she always has been, but like when I could name 50 things I love about her, and her being cute is like not even remotely in that top 50. And that's like a super important person to me. So I feel like, I don't know, when you really think about what matters, and what's important to you, that impact that you have on others, like I said, it has almost nothing to do with how hot you are.
Yep. I think that's very true. Do we want to talk anymore? I mean, that's a nice, like, poignant place to end, but I think we still have some time. We can keep talking if you want, but are there any other sort of, like, taking it back to the more topical, like beauty and wanting to, have some self-care that makes you feel good and makes you feel like you're taking care of yourself? Because I will say, one thing I will say, like, going back to, again, the self-care procedures, all that stuff, is that at some point, I don't know when the timeline of when this episode's going to come out, but there was a conversation about Botox, very light and breezy, no judgments made one way or the other, on Muscle Science for Women. And it was very hot button in terms of, we got a ton of emails and a lot of people were like, I'd really love for you to talk about this more. I'm really interested. It's obviously something that a lot of people are doing. A lot of people are interested in doing. A lot of people are potentially conflicted about. So I guess what, what's um, a useful conversation to have around self-care and how to make it work for you and be beneficial and a positive part of your health versus this like stress comparison. I got to do all these things to be perfect or else, you know what I mean? Like how do we mold it from something negative to something positive? Even if your self-care is, I don't look in the mirror and I don't give a shit, to the other end of the spectrum of I do a ton of stuff because it makes me feel better about myself.
I mean, one piece of self-care that I employ a lot that I think that I could do more, and I think we should all do more, is the unfollow button.
Mm.
Um, you know, if you are following people on social media, if you're following 22-year-old, you know, beauty influencers and fitness influencers, and I say this with nothing but love for those people, if those people are making you feel like shit about yourself, unfollow them.
Yeah.
There is nothing they are going to teach you that you can't learn somewhere else,
Yeah.
and do not need that. You don't need that. I mean, I could tell you to get off social media, but you're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So just stop following people who make you feel like shit. And that's just as true about looks as it is about anything.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, like if you're like, oh my, because I sometimes unfollow people and I feel conflicted about it. I just like put in my notes app what their name is. So it's there. So I know like, oh,
You can find
I
them
could
again if you
always
want
find
to.
them again easily enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that to me, that's a big one. Is just get rid of people who don't make you feel good.
Yeah.
Or who make you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, I don't know, you could do any number of things to change your looks. You know, you could do like, I mean, as you pointed out, like there's so many things you could do now. Most of us can't afford to do all of the things.
Mhm.
So if you can sort of pinpoint what your pain points are, and focus on those. And then also, like, I really liked what you said about like getting a facial or a massage versus like putting your resources towards something like that instead of something like Botox. And again, like if you like Botox, get the Botox by all. But I really like the idea of doing something for your looks and for your skin that also just like feels nice.
Yeah.
Like there's something really sort of poetic about that. And because it serves you on a couple of different levels. So if there are things you can do like that, where'd that come
I don't know.
from?
Technology.
If there are things you can do like that, then
Mm.
I would say that's like a great thing to focus on.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle stuff, you know, like I would say rather than trying to like overhaul all of your habits, like just do little things like drink the extra glass of water. You know, I've had a meditation practice now, it's almost 9 years. It's really important to me. It's a non-negotiable. So something like that, which can really go a long way toward relieving stress. You don't have to do what I do, but like you could literally listen to something on an app or on YouTube for 2 minutes. And if you do that every day, like that will make a big difference in your stress level. It's been proven. You can take a couple of deep breaths, you know, stuff like that, which is like really, really small. But any sort of small thing that you do for yourself is going to help you feel better about yourself, which is going to help you like what you see in the mirror a little bit more. Those are my sort of three things.
Yeah.
Just toward like gentle self-care that you know can make a real impact on
Yeah.
on the way you look and also on how you feel about the way you look.
Yeah. I like that. I have two thoughts. One, just in terms of, again, self-care and health and beauty is the idea of like consistent routines, right? Because this is another thing that I think we talk about a lot, and that's very big, is that it's not about massive overhaul changes. They're going to fix you tomorrow. It's about little things that you do every day for the rest of your life. And it compounds, and then suddenly, oh, my skin's nicer, or my nails are nicer, or I feel better and I'm not bloated because my digestion, whatever, right? So it's this idea of like pick, to your point, like the things that sort of matter or the things that are really sticking out as need some improvement, and make little changes, but make them consistently and make them over time and kind of forever, and make them part of your life if that's what matters to you. And, you know, one thing that I've been doing a lot more of as I'm getting older is I'm like expanding my skincare routine, and I don't need to like get into the details of that. And we don't even know necessarily the efficacy of it. I think some stuff works better than others for different people, but taking that time consistently to do it makes me feel better. It makes me feel nice. It makes me feel like I'm doing something. And probably it is also having some subtle improvements to my skin to make my skin look nicer. So that's a really nice, beautiful thing that you can do at home that is easy and fun. So yeah, like a routine, adding stuff to your health routine that also maybe feels a little indulgent and a little nice, and something you're just doing to make yourself feel better. I think that's really nice. And then one thought that I honestly don't know if I should say it, maybe if it's crappy, we could cut it out, but because it's it's not very magnanimous. It's like very kind of, it's sort of maybe borders on petty, but let me just say it and then you can tell me. You know, I've talked about how social media is creating this like comparison problem. And the idea of comparing ourselves. And I believe strongly that trying to compare yourself to someone else is a losing game, because no one is you and no one has your life, and they don't have the same set of parameters that you do, right? So to try to have somebody else's body or somebody else's whatever, you can't, because you aren't, right? We can still, I think it is a human sort of instinctive thing to be like maybe competitive to a certain extent, or to want to compare and contrast to other people, because we're social animals, and it's like helps you kind of figure out maybe a pecking order or where you are and stuff. So again, trying to just get rid of that concept entirely may be not realistic, the same way it's not realistic to like just stop caring about what you look like. You're going to care, right? So the idea of the fact that you do maybe size people up or compare yourself to other people, we don't want that to get problematic or dysfunctional or upsetting, but maybe just another way to reframe it, like I like to do, is instead of trying to compare yourself to someone younger than you, maybe just start to be a little bit more like, again, I'm just going to say it, like I'm fit and doing pretty good for 40. And like, I don't want to say like, I'm settling, or like you look good for your age. Like that's kind of has some negative connotations, but like to kind of step back a little bit, if you are a 40, 50, 60-year-old who can, I don't know, deadlift your body weight or run a mile without stopping, or like any kind of physical pursuit, you are in like the top percentile of fit people on the planet. If you can do a pull-up as a woman at any age, you are in like the top 1% of strong people, women on the planet. Okay. Those are some comparisons that you can make. And like, I personally would rather, if I'm going to make the comparisons, again, maybe this is just petty and crappy, but it's realistic. If I'm going to make the comparisons, I'm not going to compare myself to a 25-year-old who, you know, is a professional fitness person who doesn't have a kid, for example. Maybe I will size myself up a little bit more closely to somebody who's actually in my demographic, right? And again, not to the point where I'm going to judge myself or someone else harshly or feel bad about it, but I think it's helped me to be like, I'm pretty good for my age. That's okay. And that doesn't have to be a bad word. That doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can just be like, you're not 20, you're 40, and you're doing pretty damn good for a 40-year-old. That's okay, right?
I don't think there's anything petty about that. I also happen to know of a great program called Jacked Back for anybody who wants to
There you go.
Saying, I'm just saying.
No big deal. Great for all ages.
One thing I also do that I that until you said that, I didn't realize I was doing it on I wasn't doing it on purpose, but I realize I'm doing it is, you know, once a week I go to this spinning class. And it's sort of like dessert, because almost all of my fitness is in the, you know, is strength training in the gym, and I walk every day, but I don't really do like cardio to speak of, except for this one spinning class. But I was a runner forever. So for me, like that's like my comfort zone. So I take the spinning class. It's really fun and I get my ass kicked and whatever. But I just realized as you were saying that like every time I go, I compliment someone else on something. And it's sort of unconscious, it's almost like reflexive.
Hmm.
But I find somebody's like leggings that I really like, or I'll be biking next to someone and I'll feel like, oh my God, this person's totally pacing me, like they're keeping me going, or like something else. And and sometimes they're kind of like whatever, but usually people are like, oh wow, thanks, and it's just like a nice moment. And I feel like that's also something we can all do to
Mm.
make ourselves feel better and also make the other person feel better. It's just like showing, like, while you're sizing yourself up with whoever, like, think of a way that you can like give them a little shout out, whether it's
Yeah.
online or in person. And then I don't know, it's like you get the helper's high, like you feel good and they feel good because you said something nice about them. And I
So
don't know, we
true.
could all like boost each other a little bit, even if you just tell someone you like their leggings, like think about how you feel when someone tells you, they like
Mm-hmm.
yours. That feels
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yep.
Um,
I love that. I think that's like the nicer bookend to what I was saying. But it takes such little energy to be kind to people, and it takes such little energy to say one nice thing that could change somebody's day. And it does have that sort of rebound effect of you feeling better, you feeling good, and every tiny little, every little penny you can put in your feel good bank makes you happier and healthier, which
right.
makes you beautiful.
Right. And it doesn't take anything away from you. Like my leggings
Exactly.
don't look worse because that person's leggings are off. It's,
100%.
you know,
Yes. Love it. I love it. I think now we've hit a good ending point. I think we can end there. That's a beautiful, positive thing. If everybody listening today can, I don't know, maybe do something nice for yourself and maybe say something nice to somebody else. That's great. That's a
yeah.
great homework for everyone to do. I love that. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Any other closing points? We'll put some links in the show notes. We've got some links, we've got some stuff. And again, as always, if you like what we talked about, if we brought up anything that you'd like us to talk about more, send us a message. You can email at musclescienceforwomen@gmail.com, the number 4. You can also reach out to us on Instagram, on our websites. Both of our websites are just our names, right? BethLipton.com, AshleyVanHouten.com. My Instagram is at the Muscle Maven, and yours is?
Cookie pie 0402.
Love it so much. I love cookies and pies. I love you. You're wonderful. This has been such a great conversation as always. And stay tuned for the next one, which I'm sure will be equally enthusiastic and spicy.